Have you ever wondered what it feels like to run out of air? Not the dramatic gasping kind you see in movies, but the slow, creeping suffocation that makes your lungs burn and your vision narrow to pinpoints of failing light. Indira Hayes knew exactly what it felt like. The trunk of the sedan was pitch black, the air thick and stale with the smell of motor oil and old carpet. Her wrists were bound with zip ties that cut into her skin every time she moved. Her shoulders screamed from being twisted behind her back for what felt like hours but might have been minutes. Time had lost all meaning in the darkness. She had stopped screaming 30 minutes ago. Or was it an hour? Her throat was raw, her voice reduced to a hoarse whisper that nobody could hear anyway. The car had been moving fast at first, taking sharp turns that threw her against the metal sides of the trunk. Then it had stopped. Complete silence except for her own ragged breathing and the thunder of her heartbeat in her ears. Indira was a veterinarian, 29 years old with a small practice in Brooklyn that specialized in exotic animals. She had been attending a conference in Manhattan, presenting a paper on avian cardiac care. Her presentation had been yesterday morning. She should have been home by now, back at her clinic, checking on her recovering patients. Instead, she was zip-tied in a trunk, wondering if this was how her story ended. The attack had happened so fast. She had been walking to her car in the hotel parking garage, her conference badge still clipped to her blazer, when two men grabbed her from behind. A hand over her mouth. Something chemical-smelling pressed to her face, the world tilting and fading. Then darkness and the sound of a trunk slamming shut. That was 4 hours ago, maybe 5, maybe more. Time had become meaningless in the absolute darkness. Indira had tried everything she could think of in those first desperate minutes. She had kicked at the trunk lid until her legs gave out, until her feet were bruised and her muscles cramped from the awkward angle. She had felt around in the darkness for the emergency release latch, running her bound hands over every inch of the trunk's interior that she could reach, but there was nothing. Just smooth metal and carpet that smelled like chemicals and age. She had screamed until her voice broke, first for help, crying out until her throat was raw. Then, in rage, cursing her attackers and the unfairness of this situation. Then in fear, when she realized nobody was coming and the air was growing thinner. And finally in desperation, making sounds that were barely human, primal expressions of terror that accomplished nothing except making her more exhausted. Now she was lying in the dark, trying to breathe slowly to conserve what oxygen she had left. Every breath felt harder than the last. The air was thick and stale, filling her lungs with effort. She tried to focus on something other than her fear, tried to remember the breathing exercises from the yoga class she had taken for exactly 3 sessions before deciding it was not for her. In through the nose, out through the mouth, slow and steady, but the panic kept creeping back. What if the car never moved? What if she died here, alone in the dark, and nobody found her for days or weeks? What would happen to her clinic? Her animals needed her. She had 2 African gray parrots recovering from surgery, a bearded dragon with metabolic bone disease, and an iguana that had just started eating again after weeks of refusing food. Who would take care of them? And her family. Her mother in Atlanta who called every Sunday. Her brother who still texted her stupid memes even though she was terrible about responding. They would be devastated. They would never know what happened to her. She would just disappear, another statistic, another woman who vanished without explanation. Indira felt tears sliding down her temples into her hair. She was not ready to die. She was 29 years old. She had so much she still wanted to do. Travel to see the rainforest birds she had only read about. Finally pay off her student loans. Maybe even meet someone and fall in love, though she had been so focused on building her practice that dating had fallen by the wayside. She thought about the conference she had been attending, the presentation she had been excited to give on cardiac care in macaws, the colleagues she had been networking with, hoping to build referral relationships. It all seemed so stupid now, so meaningless. What did any of it matter if she was going to die in a trunk? Indira was not wealthy. She had student loans that would outlive cockroaches and a bank account that laughed at the concept of savings. She lived in a studio apartment in a neighborhood that real estate agents called up and coming and everyone else called sketchy. She drove a 12-year-old Honda that needed the passenger door to be opened from the inside. She was not famous or connected to anyone important. She was just a veterinarian who loved birds and spent too much time at her clinic and forgot to eat lunch most days. So why had someone kidnapped her? What value did she possibly have to anyone? The car rocked slightly and Indira froze. Voices, Male voices speaking in low tones outside the vehicle. She could not make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost angry. Then a new voice cut through, different from the others. Deeper. Commanding. Speaking in Italian with the kind of authority that made even muffled words sound like orders. Indira's heart hammered harder. She wanted to scream again, to pound on the trunk lid and beg for help, but something stopped her. Some instinct that whispered this might not be a rescue. This might be something worse. The voices grew louder, an argument. She heard the word warehouse and Constantine, and something that sounded like payment. Then silence. Heavy, weighted silence that made her skin prickle with fear. Footsteps approached the car. Multiple sets of shoes on concrete. Boss, the car was abandoned at the pier. A voice said in English, though the accent was Italian. Engine was still warm. Whoever left it was in a hurry. Check it. That deeper voice again. Calm, controlled, but with an edge that suggested violence was never far from the surface. Check everything. Indira held her breath. The footsteps circled the car. She heard doors opening, the sound of the interior being searched. Then the footsteps stopped right behind her, right above where her head pressed against the carpet. The trunk latch clicked. Light flooded in, blinding after hours of darkness. Indira squeezed her eyes shut against the sudden brightness, instinctively trying to curl into a protective ball despite the zip ties cutting into her wrists. Her first thought was terror. They had found her. The men who had taken her were back. This was the end. But then she heard the voice speaking in Italian. The tone was different from what she had expected. Not cruel or mocking, almost surprised. Reverent, even. Madre di Dio. The words were soft, barely above a whisper. Indira forced her eyes open, squinting against the light that felt like knives after so long in darkness. She could make out shapes first. The silhouette of a man backlit by industrial lighting. Then, as her vision adjusted, details emerged. A face. Sharp cheekbones that could have been carved from marble. A strong jaw darkened by stubble that framed a mouth currently set in a grim line. Eyes so dark they were almost black, reflecting the warehouse lights like polished obsidian. Hair that was perfectly styled even at whatever ungodly hour this was, swept back from his forehead with not a strand out of place. A suit that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. Probably custom-tailored to emphasize broad shoulders and a lean athletic build. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful, like a knife blade or a predator or a storm rolling in over the ocean. The kind of beautiful that came with a warning label. The kind that made smart people keep their distance. And he was staring at her like he had just found something he had not been looking for, but was suddenly very interested in keeping. "There is a woman in the trunk," another voice said unnecessarily from somewhere behind the beautiful, dangerous man. The voice sounded surprised, almost shocked. "I can see that, Matteo." The beautiful, dangerous man did not take his eyes off Indira. His voice was deep with an Italian accent that made even simple words sound elegant. But there was steel underneath the silk. Authority. The kind of voice that gave orders and expected them to be followed. "The question is why?" He reached toward her and Indira flinched violently. Her body jerked back as far as the trunk would allow, which was not far at all. Every instinct she had was screaming danger. This man, whoever he was not her rescuer. He could not be. Men who looked like that, who dressed like that, who commanded other men with guns were not heroes. They were the other kind of person in stories like this. Her voice came out as barely a whisper, hoarse from screaming. "Please, please do not hurt me." Something flickered across his face, an emotion she could not quite identify. Surprise, maybe, or anger, or something else entirely. He paused, his hand hovering in the air between them, close enough that she could see the expensive watch on his wrist, the calluses on his palm that suggested he did more than just wear expensive suits. Then his expression smoothed into something carefully neutral, professionally blank. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, and his accent made the words sound like a vow, like a promise written in blood. "But I need to get you out of there. Can you move?" Indira tried to shift position and immediately gasped as pain shot through her shoulders like electricity. The hours of being twisted at an unnatural angle had done damage. Every muscle screamed. Every joint felt like it had rusted in place. My hands. They tied my hands. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "Matteo. Knife." A second later, a blade appeared in his hand as if by magic. The knife was beautiful and terrifying, the kind of weapon that was meant for precision rather than brutality. Indira's breath caught in her throat. Her heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was it. This was where everything ended. But he moved with careful precision, sliding the blade between her wrists and the zip tie, with the kind of careful attention that suggested he had done this before. The plastic parted with barely a whisper of sound, and suddenly her hands were free. The moment the pressure released, blood rushed back into her fingers in a wave of pins and needles that made her cry out. The sensation was excruciating, like being stabbed with 1,000 tiny needles all at once. Easy. He set the knife aside and gently took her wrists in his hands, examining the deep red marks the zip ties had left. How long have you been in there? I do not know. Hours. What time is it? Just after 3 a.m. He looked up at her face, really looked at her for the first time. What is your name? Indira. Indira Hayes? Her voice was still hoarse. Who are you? Enzo Salvatore. He said it like she should recognize the name. When her expression remained blank, something that might have been amusement touched his mouth. You have no idea who I am. Should I? Most people in this city would say yes. He slid one arm under her knees, the other behind her back. But right now, what matters is getting you out of this trunk and somewhere safe. This is going to hurt. Your muscles have been compressed for hours. Before Indira could protest, he lifted her out of the trunk in one smooth motion. She had been right about the pain. Her legs buckled the moment he set her on her feet, and she would have collapsed if he had not been holding her. I have you, he said quietly. Just breathe. Indira became aware of several things at once. They were in what looked like an abandoned warehouse, the kind with broken windows and graffiti on the walls. There were at least 8 men surrounding them, all wearing expensive suits and carrying guns, and Enzo Salvatore was holding her against his chest like she weighed nothing, his body warm and solid and somehow reassuring despite the weapons and the warehouse and the entire terrifying situation. Boss, one of the men said. He was holding a wallet. Indira's wallet. Her license says she is a veterinarian from Brooklyn. There is a conference badge for a hotel in Manhattan. Enzo's eyes never left her face. A veterinarian. Exotic animals, birds mostly. Why was she explaining her practice? She should be demanding to be let go, insisting they call the police. But something about the way these men carried themselves suggested the police were not going to help. Why would someone kidnap a veterinarian? This from Matteo, who had moved closer to examine her with the kind of clinical assessment that made Indira's skin crawl. I do not know. Indira's legs were starting to support her weight again, though she was grateful for Enzo's arm still around her waist. I was leaving a conference. 2 men grabbed me in the parking garage. That is all I remember before I woke up in the trunk. Enzo's expression darkened. Describe them. I barely saw them. One had a tattoo on his hand. Cyrillic letters, I think. The other one smelled like cigarettes and something sweet. Cologne, maybe. The men exchanged looks. Matteo spoke first. Sounds like Konstantine's crew. Konstantin Volkov, Enzo said softly, and even Indira, who knew nothing about the criminal underworld, could hear the danger in those words. This was his car. We seized it during the shipment raid. But why would he leave a hostage in the trunk? Another man asked. Enzo's arm tightened around Indira's waist. He did not. He abandoned the car when we hit the shipment location. He had no idea she was inside. The implications settled over the group like a heavy blanket. Indira felt her legs go weak again. So he is going to come looking for this car. Not just the car. Enzo's voice was grim. You. If Constantine's men took you, it was for a reason. They do not kidnap random veterinarians. But I do not know anything. I have never even gotten a parking ticket. Why would anyone want to kidnap me? That is what we are going to find out. Enzo looked at Matteo. Get Carlo to trace her movements for the past week. Everyone she talked to, everywhere she went. And find out if Constantine has any connections to veterinary medicine or exotic animal trafficking. You think this is about animal smuggling? Matteo asked. I think nothing about this situation makes sense, which means we are missing information. Enzo turned his attention back to Indira. Can you walk? I think so. She took a tentative step and nearly fell again. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Without a word, Enzo swept her up into his arms, cradling her against his chest. Indira's breath caught. She should protest. She should demand to be put down, but her body was betraying her, her muscles still not working properly, and something about being held made her feel safe in a way that definitely should not make sense given the circumstances. Take the car to the scrapyard, Enzo told his men. Make sure there is nothing left that Constantine can use to track it, and find out who his local contacts are. I want to know everyone he has talked to in the past month. What about her? Matteo gestured at Indira. Enzo's arms tightened around her. She comes with me. Boss, that is not protocol. We do not bring civilians to. Do you see another option? Enzo cut him off. Constantine's men took her for a reason. Until we know what that reason is, she is not safe, and I'm not leaving her alone to find out the hard way. Indira found her voice. Excuse me, but I have a say in this. I need to call the police, report the kidnapping. There are procedures for... The police cannot help you. Enzo started walking, carrying her toward a black SUV parked near the warehouse entrance. Konstantin Volkov is not someone who is afraid of local police. He has judges and district attorneys in his pocket. You file a report, and by tomorrow morning, half the NYPD will know exactly where to find you. Is that what you want? No, but... Then trust me. Just for tonight, let me get you somewhere safe, somewhere we can figure out what Constantine wanted with you, and then we will decide next steps together. He paused, looking down at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I give you my word, Indira Hayes. I will not harm you, and I will not let anyone else harm you either. She should say no. She should insist on calling the police, on going to a hospital, on doing any of the reasonable, sensible things a person was supposed to do after being kidnapped. But something in Enzo's eyes made her believe him, and after hours in that trunk, alone and terrified and running out of air, the idea of someone else taking responsibility, even temporarily, was almost overwhelming. Just for tonight, she said quietly. His smile was small but genuine. Just for tonight. The SUV's interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Enzo set Indira down gently in the back seat before sliding in beside her. Matteo took the driver's seat, and another man Indira had not been introduced to climbed into the passenger side. As they pulled away from the warehouse, Indira caught sight of the sedan in the rearview mirror, her prison for the past several hours. She shuddered. Cold? Enzo asked. No, just thinking about that trunk. She rubbed her wrists, which were still marked with angry red lines. I thought I was going to die in there. You did not. His hand covered hers, warm and solid. You survived. That takes strength. I do not feel very strong right now. Strength is not about feeling strong. It is about continuing to breathe when everything in you wants to give up. You did that. You conserved your oxygen. You stayed calm enough to remember details about your attackers. You fought when you could and went still when you needed to. That is strength, Indira. She looked at their hands, his covering hers, and felt something shift in her chest. This man was a stranger, a dangerous stranger, if the guns in the warehouse and the way his men deferred to him were any indication, but he had pulled her out of that trunk with gentle hands. He had cut her free with careful precision, and he was looking at her like she was something precious that needed protecting. It should terrify her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in hours. Where are we going? She asked. My home. It is secure. Constantine's men will not be able to reach you there. Your home. She let that sink in. You are taking a complete stranger to your home. You are not a stranger. You are someone who is harmed, someone who needs protection. That makes you my responsibility. He said it with such certainty, such absolute conviction, that Indira almost believed him. I do not understand any of this. I do not understand who you are or why you are helping me or what Konstantin Volkov wants with a veterinarian who spends most of her time treating sick parrots. Neither do I, yet, but I will find out. His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. And until I do, you stay where I can protect you. Non-negotiable. Indira should argue. She should point out that this was insane, that she had a life and a practice and patients who needed her. But the truth was, she was exhausted and terrified, and her body still felt like it belonged to someone else. Tomorrow she could worry about getting back to normal. Tonight she just needed to feel safe. Okay, she said quietly. Just for tonight. Enzo's penthouse was in Tribeca, occupying the top 2 floors of a converted warehouse with views of the Hudson River. The elevator required a keycard and opened directly into a foyer with marble floors and art that probably cost more than Indira's clinic. Guest bedroom is on the second floor, Enzo said, guiding her with a hand on the small of her back. It has its own bathroom. You will find clothes in the closet that should fit. Some of them are new. You keep women's clothes in your guest room? My sister visits sometimes. She leaves things behind. He paused at the base of a floating staircase. Can you manage the stairs, or should I carry you again? The thought of being in his arms again made Indira's pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. I can manage. But halfway up, her legs betrayed her. Enzo caught her before she could fall, one arm around her waist, the other steadying her elbow. You are exhausted. Let me help. This time, when he lifted her, Indira did not protest. She let her head rest against his shoulder and breathed in the scent of him. Expensive cologne and something darker, dangerous. The guest room was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river. A king-sized bed with what looked like 1,000 thread-count sheets. A sitting area with a couch and a reading chair. The bathroom visible through an open door was all marble and glass and luxury. Enzo set her down gently on the edge of the bed. The clothes are in the closet. There are toiletries in the bathroom. If you need anything else, my room is at the end of the hall. Thank you. Indira looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time since the warehouse. In the soft bedroom lighting, he was even more beautiful than she had thought. Sharp features that could have been carved from stone, eyes that seemed to see straight through her. You did not have to do this. Help me. Bring me here. You could have just called the police and left me at the warehouse. I could have. He reached out and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle against her cheek. But I did not. Do you know why? No. Because when I opened that trunk and saw you there, afraid and hurt and brave enough to keep breathing, I knew. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I knew you were going to change everything. Before Indira could ask what he meant, he stepped back. Get some rest. We will figure this out in the morning. Then he was gone, closing the door quietly behind him, leaving Indira alone in a bedroom that cost more than her yearly salary, with her heart racing and her mind spinning with questions she did not have answers to. She should be terrified. She should be planning her escape, figuring out how to get back to her normal life, calling someone for help. Instead, she found herself thinking about the way Enzo had looked at her in that warehouse, like she was something precious, like she was someone worth protecting, like she was someone who mattered. Indira made her way to the bathroom on shaking legs. The shower was massive, with multiple jets and controls that looked like they belonged in a spaceship. She stood under the hot water for longer than necessary, letting it wash away the smell of the trunk, the fear, the lingering terror of thinking she might die alone in the dark. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was probably worth more than her couch, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Soft pajamas in deep blue, a robe in cream-colored silk, everything fit perfectly. Enzo's sister must be exactly her size. Or he had guessed. The thought that he had paid enough attention to guess her clothing size made something flutter in Indira's stomach. She should sleep. She needed sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she was back in that trunk, running out of air, wondering if anyone would find her before it was too late. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Indira, I saw your light was still on. She opened the door to find Enzo standing in the hallway, now dressed in lounge pants and a t-shirt that did absolutely nothing to hide his athletic build. His hair was slightly mussed, like he had been running his hands through it. I could not sleep, she admitted. Neither could I. He held up a bottle and 2 glasses. Whiskey. Not exactly medical protocol for trauma recovery, but it helps. I'm not much of a drinker. Neither am I, usually, but tonight feels like an exception. He paused. May I come in? Or, if you would prefer to be alone. No. The word came out too quickly. I mean, company would be nice, if you do not mind. Enzo's smile was soft. I do not mind at all. He settled on the couch in her sitting area while she curled up in the reading chair, her legs tucked under her. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. To surviving, he said, raising his glass. To being found, Indira countered. They drank. The whiskey burned going down but left a pleasant warmth in its wake. Tell me about your veterinary practice, Enzo said after a moment of comfortable silence. His voice was softer now, without the hard edge of command it had carried in the warehouse. Why exotic animals? Why does anyone choose what they choose? Indira cradled the glass in her hands, feeling the warmth of the whiskey spreading through her chest. I grew up in a neighborhood in Atlanta where there were not a lot of pets. Not traditional ones anyway. People could not afford to take care of dogs and cats properly, but there was this old man on our block, Mr. Jenkins, who kept pigeons, racing pigeons. He used to let me help feed them when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. Racing pigeons? Enzo's smile was genuine, transforming his face from intimidating to almost boyish. My grandfather kept pigeons in Sicily. He said they were better than any technology for carrying messages. Mr. Jenkins said the same thing. He used to tell me stories about pigeons in World War II, carrying messages across enemy lines, how they could navigate from hundreds of miles away and find their way home no matter what. I was fascinated by them. Indira found herself smiling at the memory, the way they communicated with each other, the way they remembered faces and places, the way each one had its own personality. Birds are incredible creatures, so much more intelligent and complex than people give them credit for. And that led to veterinary school? Eventually, my mother wanted me to be a human doctor. She thought veterinary medicine was, and I quote, a waste of my brain, but I could not imagine doing anything else. I specialized in avian medicine first, then branched out to other exotics. Reptiles, small mammals, the occasional ferret. My practice is small, but it is mine. Every animal that comes through my door is there because their owner trusts me to help them. That means something. She paused, her smile fading. Or it did. Before tonight? Now I do not know if I will ever feel safe going back. You will. Enzo's voice was firm, leaving no room for doubt. Once we figure out what Constantine wanted with you, once we eliminate the threat completely, you will go back to your practice and your patients. You will walk into that clinic with your head held high, and you will continue doing the work you love. I promise you that. You cannot promise that. You do not even know me. We met, 6 hours ago? Less. You do not owe me anything. I know enough. He leaned forward, setting his glass down on the coffee table between them. His elbows rested on his knees, and suddenly he seemed less like a dangerous crime boss and more like just a man trying to make a point. I know you are brave enough to remember details about your attackers, even while you were terrified for your life. Most people would have dissociated completely, blocked it all out. But you paid attention. You noticed tattoos and smells and anything that might help identify them later. That takes presence of mind. Or stupidity? Not stupidity, survival instinct. The good kind. His dark eyes held hers. I know you are strong enough to stay calm in a situation that would have broken most people. You did not panic in that trunk, even when you were running out of air. You rationed your oxygen. You conserved your strength. You waited for an opportunity. That is strength, Indira. Real strength, not the kind people perform for audiences. I did not feel strong. I felt terrified. Strength and fear are not opposites. They coexist. The bravest person in any room is usually the one who is most afraid but acts anyway. He picked up his glass again, taking a small sip before continuing. I also know you care deeply about your work. The way you talked about your patients, about the animals waiting for you. You love what you do. That is rare. Most people tolerate their work, trade their time for money. You genuinely care. How can you possibly know that from one conversation? Because I see it in your eyes when you talk about it. The way your whole face changes. The way your voice softens. You light up from the inside. He paused. And I know that you deserve to feel safe. To walk down a street without looking over your shoulder. To attend a conference without wondering if someone is going to grab you in a parking garage. You deserve that basic human dignity. And I am going to make sure you get it back. Indira felt something shift in her chest. Some wall she had not even known was there began to crack. Why? Why do you care what happens to me? Because I saw you in that trunk, and something in me recognized something in you. He set his glass down again, and moved from the couch to kneel beside her chair, putting them at eye level. You reminded me that there is more to life than power and control, that there are still people in this world worth protecting, worth saving, worth knowing. I am not special. You are to me. His hand reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. When she did not, his palm cupped her cheek with surprising gentleness. From the moment I saw you, I knew. I cannot explain it rationally. I cannot point to a specific thing and say that is why. But I knew you were going to matter. That you were going to change things. Change me. That is a lot of pressure to put on someone you just met. I know. If it is too much, tell me. Tell me to back off, to just protect you and leave you alone, and I will. I promise I will. His thumb traced her cheekbone with feather-light pressure. But if there is any part of you that feels this too, this connection, then let me in. Let me be more than just your protector. Let me be someone you can trust. You are not going to tell me who you really are you? What you do? Why you have armed men in secure penthouses and the ability to hide me from someone like Konstantin Volkov? Indira took another sip of whiskey. I assumed if you wanted me to know, you would tell me. Most people would have demanded answers immediately. I am not most people. She met his gaze, and honestly, part of me does not want to know, because whatever answer you give me is going to change how I see you. And right now, all I see is the man who pulled me out of that trunk and promised to keep me safe. I would like to hold on to that for a little while longer. Something flickered across Enzo's face. Surprise, maybe. Or admiration. He stood and crossed to her chair, kneeling down so they were eye level. Then I will not tell you, not tonight. Tonight I am just Enzo Salvatore, and you are just Indira Hayes, and we are two people who happen to find each other in a warehouse at 3 a.m. That is a very diplomatic way of avoiding the question. I learned from the best. He reached out and took her free hand in his. Try to sleep. You are safe here, I promise. Will you stay? The words were out before Indira could stop them. Not in the bed, just in the room. I do not want to be alone. Enzo did not hesitate. Of course. He settled onto the couch, pulling a throw blanket over his legs. Indira finished her whiskey and climbed into bed, leaving the bedside lamp on. From her position, she could see Enzo's profile in the dim light, strong and solid and reassuring. Enzo? Yes? Thank you for everything. You are welcome, Indira. Now sleep. I will be here when you wake up. And strangely, impossibly, she believed him. Indira woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she could not remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The trunk, the warehouse. Enzo. She sat up quickly, looking for him. The couch was empty, the throw blanket folded neatly, but she could hear voices from somewhere below, male voices speaking in rapid Italian. Indira found clothes laid out on the chair, jeans that fit perfectly, a soft sweater in deep green, even undergarments still in their packaging. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs, following the sound of voices and the smell of coffee. The kitchen was massive and modern, all stainless steel and dark wood. Enzo stood at the counter with Matteo and 2 other men, all of them focused on a laptop screen. They looked up when she entered. Buongiorno, Enzo said, his expression warming. There is coffee in the pot, and Maria is making breakfast. She will be here in a moment. Maria? My housekeeper. She also happens to be an excellent cook. He gestured to the other men. You remember Matteo? This is Carlo and Giorgio. They have been working through the night on your situation. And? Indira poured herself coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. And we have some interesting findings. Carlo, who looked like he had not slept, pulled up several files on the laptop. You attended a veterinary conference at the Waldorf. One of the speakers was Dr. Alexander Petrov, a specialist in exotic animal medicine from Moscow. I know Dr. Petrov. I have read his research. But I did not attend his session. There was a scheduling conflict. According to our sources, Dr. Petrov has connections to several Russian criminal organizations. He has been implicated in exotic animal trafficking, using his medical expertise to keep high-value animals alive during transport. Indira's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. You think that is why I was taken? Because of Dr. Petrov? We think you were mistaken for someone else. Giorgio pulled up a photo. This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She was also at the conference. She attended Petrov's session and reportedly had a confrontation with him about his research methods. Indira stared at the photo. Dr. Mitchell was about her age, her height, with a similar build. She was also black, with hair styled in braids, similar to the ones Indira had been wearing at the conference. We look alike. Enough alike that in a parking garage with poor lighting, someone could mistake you for her. Enzo moved to stand beside her, his presence steady. Konstantin has been trying to recruit Petrov for months. Petrov has been refusing, saying his research is not for criminals. We think Constantine ordered his men to grab Dr. Mitchell as leverage, force Petrov to cooperate by threatening someone he respects. But they got me instead. They got you instead, Enzo confirmed. Which means Dr. Mitchell is still out there, still a target. And now so are you, because Constantine knows he made a mistake. Indira set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. So, what do? We find Dr. Mitchell, before Constantine does. We get her somewhere safe, and we convince Petrov to go public with what he knows about Constantine's animal trafficking operation. Once Petrov talks, Constantine loses his leverage. And what about me? Enzo turned to face her fully, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. You stay here, where you are safe, where I can protect you. For how long? As long as it takes. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I told you last night, Indira. You are my responsibility now. I do not take that lightly. I cannot just hide here forever. I have a practice, patience, a life. I know, and you will have all of that back. But first, we need to neutralize the threat. His dark eyes searched hers. Trust me, please. Before Indira could respond, an older woman bustled into the kitchen carrying bags of groceries. She took one look at Indira and immediately began speaking in rapid Italian, gesturing expressively. Enzo smiled. Maria, English please. This is Indira. She is my guest. Guest. Maria set down her bags and crossed to Indira, taking her face in both hands. You are too thin, and these circles under your eyes. You have not been sleeping? I will make you a proper breakfast. You really do not have to? Nonsense. You are under Enzo's protection, which means you are family, and family eats properly. Maria was already pulling ingredients from bags. You like eggs? Of course you like eggs. Everyone likes eggs. Matteo caught Indira's eye and mouthed, just agree. She found herself smiling despite everything. Eggs sound wonderful. Thank you, Maria. The next hour passed in a blur of breakfast and strategy sessions. Matteo made calls to various contacts throughout the city. Carlo worked on tracking down Dr. Mitchell's location. Giorgio coordinated with what he called security assets to establish a protective perimeter. And Enzo stayed close to Indira, always within arm's reach, as if he was afraid she might disappear if he looked away. By noon, they had a location for Dr. Mitchell, a brownstone in Park Slope, where she lived with her husband and 2 young children, a toddler and an infant. Carlo had confirmed she was home, unaware that she had ever been a target. We need to move her, Matteo said. If we found her this easily, Constantine's men will too. Agreed. Enzo looked at Indira. I need to go. This should only take a few hours. Giorgio will stay here with you. You will be safe. I want to come with you. Every man in the room turned to stare at her. Enzo's expression was carefully neutral. That is not a good idea. She needs to hear this from someone she can relate to, another veterinarian, someone who understands her work. Indira stood her ground. If you show up with guns and demands, she's going to panic. She has children. She will not want to leave them, but if I explain what happened to me, if I tell her about the mistake Constantine's men made, she might listen. She has a point, boss, Carlo said quietly. Enzo's jaw tightened. It is too dangerous. More dangerous than being locked in a trunk? More dangerous than being kidnapped by Russian mobsters? Indira crossed her arms. I am already in danger. At least let me do something useful with it. For a long moment, Enzo just looked at her. Then he exhaled slowly. If you come, you follow my instructions exactly. No arguments, no improvisation. You stay behind me at all times. Understood? Understood. And if anything goes wrong, if I tell you to run, you run. No heroics, no looking back. You get to safety and let me handle it. I can do that. Can you? Because heroics get people killed, Indira, and I am not losing you to some misplaced sense of bravery. The intensity in his voice caught her off guard. You barely know me. I know enough. He closed the distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her face again. It was becoming a familiar gesture, one that made Indira's breath catch every time. I know that you matter. To me, and I protect what matters. They rode to Park Slope in the same SUV from the night before, Enzo beside her in the back seat, Matteo and Carlo in front. 2 more vehicles followed behind, carrying additional men whose names Indira had not learned. Tell me about Dr. Mitchell, Enzo said as they crossed the Manhattan Bridge. What do you know about her? Only what I have read in journals. She specializes in reptile medicine. She published a groundbreaking paper on treating metabolic bone disease in captive iguanas. From what I understand, she is brilliant. And stubborn, Carlo added from the front seat. According to our intel, she refused a lucrative research position at a pharmaceutical company because they were testing on animals. She has ethics. That makes her both an asset and a liability. The brownstone was in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and children playing on stoops. It looked nothing like a place where someone's life might be in danger, but Enzo's men fanned out around the building with practiced efficiency, taking positions on the street corners and alleyways. Enzo took Indira's hand. Remember, behind me, always. I remember. They climbed the front steps together. Matteo knocked. A moment later, a man in his 40s opened the door, the infant balanced on his hip. Yes? Mr. Mitchell, my name is Enzo Salvatore. This is Dr. Indira Hayes. We need to speak with your wife about a matter of some urgency. May we come in? Mr. Mitchell's expression shifted from curiosity to wariness. What is this about? It is about keeping your family safe, Indira said gently. Please, we would not be here if it were not important. Something in her tone must have convinced him. He stepped back, allowing them to enter. Sarah, there are some people here to see you. Dr. Mitchell appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was exactly as Indira had imagined. Professional, composed, with an air of competence that came from years of difficult work. She looked at Enzo first, then at Indira, and her expression shifted to confusion. I know you. You were at the Waldorf conference. I was. I am Indira Hayes. I run an exotic animal practice in Brooklyn. Indira took a deep breath. Dr. Mitchell, do you remember attending a session by Dr. Alexander Petrov? Of course. His research is questionable at best, unethical at worst. I told him as much. She paused. Why? Because last night I was kidnapped by men working for a Russian criminal named Konstantin Volkov. They mistook me for you. The color drained from Dr. Mitchell's face. What? Indira told her everything. The parking garage, the trunk, being found by Enzo's men, the discovery that she had been grabbed because she looked like Dr. Mitchell from a distance. They wanted you, Indira finished, as leverage against Dr. Petrov, to force him to work for Konstantin's animal trafficking operation. They got me by mistake, but now they know they got the wrong person, which means they will be coming for you next. Dr. Mitchell sank into a chair, her husband moving immediately to her side, handing the infant to her instinctively. I have 2 children, a toddler and a baby. I cannot. You can, Enzo cut in, his voice firm but not unkind. And you will. My men can have you and your family relocated within the hour. Somewhere safe. Somewhere Konstantin will never find you. But we need to move now. Why should we trust you? Mr. Mitchell demanded. You show up at our door with some wild story. Because I am here. Indira moved to kneel in front of Dr. Mitchell's chair. Because I lived through what they intended for you. And because this man and his people saved my life when they had absolutely no obligation to do so. If Enzo Salvatore says he can keep you safe, I believe him. Dr. Mitchell searched Indira's face. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her. How long would we need to hide? Until we can neutralize the threat. A few days at most. Enzo pulled out his phone. I have a safe house in Connecticut. Secure, comfortable, fully staffed. Your children will be safe there. You have my word. And then what? We just go back to our lives like nothing happened? We ensure Konstantin has no reason to come after you again, which means going after his operation instead of his leverage. Enzo looked at Indira, then back at Dr. Mitchell. Will you trust me? For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Dr. Mitchell nodded. Okay. Yes. What do we need to do? The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. Enzo's men helped the Mitchell family pack essentials. Cars were arranged. Routes were planned. Indira found herself holding Dr. Mitchell's toddler, a 3-year-old with pigtails who had decided Indira was her new best friend, while the adults organized the logistics of disappearing. You are good with children, Enzo observed, appearing at her side. I am good with living things in general. It is kind of my job. Indira bounced the little girl on her hip. Are you sure this will work? Yes. The safe house is one of my most secure properties. Constantine will never find them there. And then what? You go after him? Then I eliminate the threat permanently. His expression darkened. Konstantin Volkov has been a problem for a long time. This gives me the excuse I need to deal with him properly. Indira wanted to ask what that meant, but she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. By the time the Mitchell family was safely loaded into an armored SUV and heading north, the sun was setting. Enzo's men dispersed to their various assignments. Matteo went to coordinate with additional security at the Connecticut safe house. Carlo left to gather intelligence on Constantine's current location, and Indira found herself alone with Enzo again, standing on the Mitchells' front steps as twilight settled over Brooklyn. That was exhausting, she said, but necessary. He turned to face her, his expression serious. Thank you for coming, for convincing Dr. Mitchell to trust me. She would not have listened to just me. You saved her family. She should thank you. We saved her family. Together. His hand found hers. You were brave today, Indira. Coming here, facing the reality of what almost happened to you by meeting the person it was supposed to happen to. That took courage. I did not feel courageous. I felt terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite the fear. You did that. He pulled her closer. Let me take you home. Home, Indira repeated. To your penthouse. For now, yes. Unless you would prefer somewhere else? She should say yes. Should insist on going back to her own apartment, her own life. But the truth was, the idea of being alone right now terrified her. And the idea of being with Enzo felt surprisingly right. Your place is fine, she said quietly. They rode back to Manhattan in comfortable silence, Enzo's hand still holding hers. When they reached the penthouse, he led her directly to the kitchen, where Maria had left prepared meals in the refrigerator. You need to eat, he said, pulling out containers. When did you last have a proper meal? Yesterday morning at the conference before my presentation. Indira's stomach growled at the thought of food. I am starving. Then sit. Let me take care of you. Watching Enzo Salvatore, who commanded armed men and lived in a Tribeca penthouse and looked like he could kill someone with his bare hands, carefully plating pasta and reheating marinara sauce, was surreal. But there was something endearing about the careful way he arranged everything, the way he checked to make sure the food was the right temperature before setting it in front of her. You did not have to do this, Indira said, as he joined her at the table with his own plate. I wanted to. He poured wine for both of them. You have had a traumatic day. The least I can do is make sure you're fed. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Indira set down her fork. Can I ask you something? Anything. Last night you said that when you found me in the trunk, you knew I was going to change everything. What did you mean? Enzo set down his own fork, his dark eyes intense. I have lived a certain kind of life, Indira. A life where trust is currency and weakness is death. Where emotions are liabilities and attachments are exploitable. I have built my entire existence around control and distance. And then I opened a trunk and found you there. Afraid but fighting. Vulnerable but strong. And in that moment I knew that you were going to break through every wall I have ever built. That you were going to make me care in ways I have spent years avoiding. He reached across the table to take her hand. You terrify me, Indira Hayes, because you make me want things I cannot have. Things like normalcy and safety and a future that does not involve constant danger. Then why keep me here? Why not just protect Dr. Mitchell and let me go back to my life? Because the moment I pulled you from that trunk, you became mine to protect, and I do not let go of what is mine. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I know that is possessive. I know it is probably wrong, but I cannot help it, will not help it. You are under my protection now, Indira, and I am not walking away from that responsibility. She should be offended, should push back against the casual assumption of ownership. But something in the way he said it, the reverence in his voice, the gentleness in his touch, made it feel less like a cage and more like a promise. I do not belong to anyone, she said softly. I know. That is what makes you perfect. He stood, pulling her up with him. Dance with me. There is no music. Then we will make our own. He pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers against his chest. They swayed together in the kitchen, moving to a rhythm only they could hear. Indira let her head rest against his shoulder. He smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him. His body was solid and warm and made her feel safe in a way nothing else had since this nightmare began. "I should be terrified of you," she whispered. "I know. I should be demanding to leave, to call the police, to get as far from this situation as possible. I know that too. So why am I not?" Enzo pulled back just enough to look down at her. "Because you know, just like I know, that this is where you are supposed to be. That finding you in that trunk was not random chance. It was fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it. We were meant to find each other, Indira. And now that we have, I am not letting you go." He kissed her then. Soft at first, tentative, giving her the chance to pull away. When she did not, when she instead pressed closer and kissed him back, he deepened it. His hand slid up to cup the back of her head, fingers tangling in her hair. Her hands found their way under his jacket, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Enzo pressed his forehead to hers. "Say you will stay. Not just tonight. Not just until this is over. Say you will stay. I do not even know what staying means. What your life looks like. What you really do. I am the head of the Salvatore family. We control certain territories, certain operations. Some of them legal, most of them not. I am not a good man, Indira. I have done things that would horrify you, hurt people, made decisions that cost lives. I am dangerous and ruthless and everything you should run from. And yet you pulled me from that trunk with gentle hands. You protected Dr. Mitchell's family without asking for anything in return. You make your housekeeper smile and your men respect you and you dance with me in your kitchen when there is no music. Those things do not cancel out the bad. No, but they complicate it. Make you more than just the monster you think you are." She cupped his face in her hands. "I am not naive, Enzo. I know what you are, what you do, and I am choosing to stay anyway. Not because I think I can fix you or change you, but because when I am with you, I feel safer than I have ever felt in my life. And I think you need that too. To be seen as more than just dangerous. To be wanted for who you are, not what you can provide. You are either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both." She kissed him again. "But I'm staying. For now. And we will see where this goes." Enzo picked her up, cradling her against his chest. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My bedroom. Unless you prefer, your bedroom is fine." His bedroom was as luxurious as the rest of the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. A massive bed with crisp white sheets. Art that probably cost more than Indira's student loans, but she barely noticed any of it because Enzo was kissing her again, his hands in her hair, her body pressed against his. They moved together toward the bed, shedding clothes as they went. Enzo's jacket, her sweater, his shirt, her jeans. Each piece of clothing that fell away felt like shedding armor, revealing the vulnerable parts underneath. When they finally came together, skin against skin, Indira felt something shift deep in her chest. This was more than physical attraction, more than the adrenaline of danger and rescue. This was connection, recognition, the feeling of finding someone who fit in all the broken places. Enzo made love to her with the same careful attention he had shown when cutting her free from the zip ties. Gentle when she needed gentle, intense when she needed intensity. Always watching her face, reading her responses, making sure she felt safe even as she surrendered control. After, they lay tangled together in his bed, her head on his chest, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her back. "I have never done this before," he said quietly. "Had sex," Indira teased, "brought someone into my life, my real life, the parts I usually keep separate." His hand stilled. "You are the first person I have wanted to show everything to, the good and the bad, the dangerous and the gentle, all of it. Why me? Because you see me. Not just the boss or the criminal or the man with money and power. You see the person underneath. The one who dances without music and makes sure you eat and wants to protect you from everything." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "You make me want to be better. Not different. Just better. That is a lot of pressure. Then we will carry it together." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time since the trunk, Indira slept without nightmares. The next 3 days passed in a strange kind of domesticity. Enzo continued to manage his operations from the penthouse, taking calls and meetings while Indira explored his space, read books from his extensive library, and helped Maria in the kitchen. His men came and went, always respectful, always treating her like she belonged there. Carlo reported that Dr. Mitchell and her family were settling into the Connecticut safe house. Matteo tracked down more information about Constantine's trafficking operation. Giorgio coordinated surveillance. Enzo's team also made contact with Dr. Petrov, offering him protection in exchange for his testimony. When they showed him evidence that Constantine was planning to eliminate him once his usefulness ended, Petrov agreed to cooperate. And Enzo, true to his word, kept Indira close. She attended meetings when he decided she should hear what was being discussed. She offered input when he asked for her perspective. He treated her not as a protected asset, but as a partner, someone whose opinion mattered. On the fourth night, they were having dinner when Enzo's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "I need to take this." He stepped away, speaking in rapid Italian. When he returned, his expression was grim. "What is wrong?" Indira asked. "Constantine knows where Dr. Mitchell is. One of his people managed to track one of the vehicle transfers. He has men en route to Connecticut. We need to move her again, tonight. Then let us go. Indira, you said we are partners, so let me be a partner. Dr. Mitchell trusts me. She will move more easily if I am there to explain the situation." She stood. "Besides, you need someone who can keep the children calm, and I'm very good with children." Enzo looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he nodded. "Get dressed, something warm. We leave in 10 minutes. The drive to Connecticut was tense. Enzo made call after call, coordinating security, planning routes, ensuring the Mitchell family would be safe. Indira watched him work, amazed at how quickly he could shift from gentle lover to dangerous commander. They reached the safe house just after midnight. It was a beautiful property, secluded and secure, with armed men positioned around the perimeter, but the atmosphere inside was panicked. Dr. Mitchell was packing frantically while her husband tried to keep the children calm. "We have to go," Dr. Mitchell said the moment she saw Indira. "They found us. I do not understand how, but they found us." "I know. That is why we are here, to move you somewhere even safer." Indira took the toddler who was crying, bouncing her gently. "But we need to do this calmly, okay? The children can feel your fear. They need to see you confident." It took 20 minutes to get everyone loaded into vehicles. The plan was to split them up. Mr. Mitchell and the infant in one car, Dr. Mitchell and the toddler in another. Multiple routes to multiple safe houses to confuse anyone trying to follow. They were just pulling out when Matteo's voice crackled through the radio. "Boss, we have incoming. 3 vehicles, armed. They are going to reach the house before we can get clear." Enzo's expression went cold. "How far?" 2 minutes, maybe less. "Get the Mitchell family to the backup location. Take the back roads. Matteo and I will hold them here." "Enzo, no," Indira started. "Giorgio, you are with Indira. Keep her safe." Enzo turned to her, his hand cupping her face. "I need you to go, now. Do not argue. Just trust me. I'm not leaving you here to—" "Yes, you are. Because if anything happens to Dr. Mitchell's family, none of this matters. They need to get away safely, which means someone has to stay here and make it look like we are all still in the house." He kissed her hard and fast. "Go. I will find you. I promise." Before Indira could protest further, Giorgio was pulling her toward one of the SUVs. She looked back to see Enzo and Matteo positioning themselves at the front of the house, guns drawn, faces set in expressions of deadly calm. Then they were driving, fast and reckless through dark country roads, and Indira could only watch through the rear window as the safe house disappeared into the distance. "He will be fine," Giorgio said from the driver's seat. "The boss has been in worse situations." "That does not make me feel better." "It should. He is smart and well-trained and has the best team in the city. Plus, he has motivation to stay alive now." Giorgio glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "He has you." They drove for 2 hours, changing vehicles twice, doubling back on their route multiple times to ensure they were not being followed. They were still in the SUV approaching the backup safe house, a cabin in the Berkshires, when Indira's phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. She answered anyway. "Dr. Hayes, so nice to finally speak with you." The voice was accented, Russian, cold. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Who is this?" "Konstantin Volkov, and you have been a very inconvenient problem. First you survive when you should have died. Then you convince your new protector to hide Dr. Mitchell from me. And now you have cost me considerable time and resources tracking you down." Giorgio heard the entire conversation through the car's Bluetooth system. His jaw tightened as he pulled the SUV to the side of the road. Indira's blood ran cold. What do you want? Simple. An exchange. You for information about where Dr. Mitchell is hiding. And before you say no, consider this. I have men positioned outside the lovely cabin you are currently heading toward. I have men positioned outside Enzo Salvatore's penthouse. I have men positioned outside your veterinary clinic. I can reach you anywhere, but if you come to me willingly, if you tell me where Dr. Mitchell is, I will leave everyone else alone. You have my word. Your word means nothing. Perhaps. But do you really want to find out what I am willing to do to people you care about? He paused. You have 1 hour to decide. I will send you coordinates. Come alone. Or watch everyone you have tried to protect die because you were too selfish to make a sacrifice. The line went dead. Indira stared at her phone, her hands shaking. Giorgio was already on another phone, speaking rapidly in Italian. What are you going to do? He asked when he hung up. I do not know. Indira thought about the Mitchell family, hopefully safe now and heading to a different location. The toddler with pigtails. The infant who had just started sleeping through the night. I cannot let him hurt them, but I also cannot tell him where they are. Then we fight. We call the boss, bring in reinforcements. There is not time. Constantine said 1 hour. By the time reinforcements arrive, he could have already attacked. Could have hurt people. She took a breath, decision made. I have to go, but I'm not telling him anything. I'm just going to buy time until Enzo can figure out a better plan. Dr. Hayes, with all respect, that is a terrible idea. Do you have a better one? When Giorgio did not answer, Indira nodded. That is what I thought. Give me your phone. I need to call Enzo. Giorgio handed it over reluctantly. Enzo answered on the first ring. Talk to me. It is Indira. Constantine called. He wants to make a trade. Me for information about Dr. Mitchell's location. He gave me 1 hour. The silence on the other end was terrifying. Then Enzo's voice, colder than she had ever heard it. Tell me you are not considering going to him. He has men everywhere, Enzo. Outside the cabin, outside your penthouse, outside my clinic. If I do not go, he will hurt people. I cannot let that happen. So your solution is to sacrifice yourself? My solution is to buy time. I go to him, refuse to tell him anything, and wait for you to come get me. Indira, listen to me very carefully. If you go to Konstantin Volkov, I may not be able to get you back. He is not some petty criminal. He is dangerous and smart, and he has resources I cannot match. You go to him, and you might not survive it. I know. But what choice do I have? She paused. You told me you protect what is yours. Well, those people are mine too. Dr. Mitchell and her family, Maria, Giorgio, you. I am not letting Constantine hurt any of you because of me. Indira, I am doing this, Enzo, whether you approve or not, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you will keep them safe. All of them. No matter what happens to me. I will keep them safe. But I'm also getting you back. That is non-negotiable. His voice softened. Hold on, Kara. Just hold on. I am coming for you. I know. She hung up before he could hear her voice break. Giorgio drove her to the coordinates Constantine had sent, an abandoned factory outside of New Haven, the kind of place that featured in horror movies and police procedurals. Cars surrounded the building, expensive and dark. Men with guns stood at every entrance. This is a bad idea, Giorgio said for the 10th time. Probably. Indira took a deep breath. But it is the only idea I have. Wait for Enzo. Tell him where I am. And trust that I can survive long enough for him to make a plan. You are either very brave or very crazy. My boyfriend said the same thing. She opened the car door. I am going with brave. The men at the entrance searched her thoroughly before allowing her inside. The factory floor was mostly empty, just old machinery and broken windows. And standing in the center, like he owned the place, was a man in an expensive suit with cold eyes and a smile that did not reach them. Konstantin Volkov. Dr. Hayes, how punctual. I appreciate that in a person. He gestured to a chair that had been set up in the middle of the floor. Please, sit. I will stand. I insist. 2 men grabbed her arms and forced her into the chair. Zip ties appeared, binding her wrists to the chair arms. Just a precaution. I have learned not to underestimate resourceful women. I'm not telling you where Dr. Mitchell is. No, even knowing what I will do to you if you refuse?" He pulled out a knife, the blade catching the dim light. "I can be very persuasive when necessary." "Do whatever you want. I am not giving you information that will get innocent people hurt." "Admirable. Foolish, but admirable." He crouched in front of her chair. "Tell me, Dr. Hayes, did Enzo Salvatore warn you about me? Did he tell you that I once kept a man alive for 3 days while I extracted information? Did he mention my particular talent for making people regret their stubbornness? He mentioned you were a coward who kidnapped veterinarians because you cannot fight someone on equal footing." Constantine's smile widened. Brave words for someone zip-tied to a chair, but bravery will only carry you so far. He stood, gesturing to his men. "We have time. Her hero will not arrive for at least another hour. That gives us plenty of opportunities to change her mind about cooperation." What followed was the longest hour of Indira's life. Constantine did not use the knife. Not at first. He simply had his men move her chair closer to some old machinery, industrial equipment that looked like it had been abandoned for decades, then started up. The noise was immediate and deafening, a grinding mechanical roar that seemed to come from all directions at once. The vibrations traveled up through the chair legs into her body, rattling her bones, making her teeth ache. She could feel it in her chest, in her skull, everywhere. He asked questions, simple ones at first. "Where is Dr. Mitchell? What location did Salvatore take her to? How many men are guarding her?" Indira refused to answer. She kept her mouth shut, her jaw clenched, her eyes fixed on a point somewhere past Constantine's shoulder. She would not give him anything, not one word, not one hint, not one piece of information he could use to hurt Dr. Mitchell's family. So he increased the noise. The machinery grew louder, more violent. The vibrations became painful, like being shaken apart from the inside. Indira's vision blurred, her head pounded. She could taste blood where she had bitten her tongue, but still she refused to speak. Then came the cold water. One of Constantine's men appeared with a bucket, and before Indira could brace herself, icy water cascaded over her head. It stole her breath, shocked her system, soaked through her clothes until she was shivering violently. The cold was immediate and brutal, turning her lips blue, making her teeth chatter so hard she thought they might crack. "Where is Dr. Mitchell?" Constantine asked again, his voice perfectly calm, like they were discussing the weather. Indira said nothing, just shook from the cold and tried to keep breathing. Another bucket, then another. The water was so cold it felt like knives against her skin. Her fingers went numb. Her body stopped shivering and started convulsing, her muscles spasming from the extreme temperature. Hypothermia was setting in. She knew the signs: confusion, drowsiness, slurred speech if she tried to talk, which she would not. "You are a stubborn woman," Constantine observed, crouching in front of her chair again. "I respect that, I do. But stubbornness will only carry you so far before it becomes stupidity. Tell me what I want to know, and this ends. You go home. You forget this ever happened. Everyone is happy. Except Dr. Mitchell's children," Indira managed through chattering teeth. "They would not be happy when their mother disappeared. Children are resilient, they adapt, they forget." He stood, brushing imaginary dust from his expensive pants. "But you, Dr. Hayes, you are running out of time. Your body temperature is dropping. Soon you will lose consciousness. And when you wake up, if you wake up, you will wish you had cooperated." Indira retreated into herself, into the mental space she had learned in that trunk. Just breathe. Just survive. Just hold on long enough. She did not know how much time had passed when the windows exploded inward. Glass rained down as men in tactical gear rappelled through the openings. Gunfire erupted. Constantine's men scattered, returning fire, chaos erupting throughout the factory floor. And then he was there. Enzo, moving through the chaos with deadly precision. His gun fired twice, dropping the men closest to Indira. Then he was at her side, cutting through the zip ties with that same careful efficiency he had shown in the warehouse. "I have you," he said, pulling her up. "I have you, Kara. You are safe now. Enzo, later. Right now we run." He half-carried her toward the nearest exit, his men providing cover fire. They made it to an SUV and Enzo shoved her inside, climbing in after her. The vehicle took off before the door was even closed, tires screaming on asphalt. Indira collapsed against Enzo, her body shaking. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight against his chest. "You crazy, brave, foolish woman. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking I could not let him hurt anyone because of me." So you let him hurt you instead? His voice broke. Do you have any idea what it was like knowing you were in there, knowing what he was doing to you? I am sorry. No, you are not allowed to apologize for being brave. You are not allowed to apologize for protecting people you care about. He pressed his face into her hair, but you are also not allowed to do that ever again. You are under my protection, Indira. Mine to protect, mine to keep safe, and I cannot do that if you keep throwing yourself into danger. Then you better figure out how to eliminate threats more efficiently. Despite everything, he laughed. You are insane. I prefer brave. Same thing sometimes. He kissed her, hard and desperate and claiming, I thought I lost you. But you did not. You found me. Again. She pulled back to look at him. Is it always going to be like this? Danger and rescues and people trying to kill me? I hope not, but I cannot promise you safe, Indira. I can only promise you protected, and loved, and valued above everything else in my life. His hand cupped her face. Is that enough? She thought about her life before, safe and boring and lonely. Then she thought about the past few days, terrifying and intense and full of a man who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. It is enough, she said. More than enough. 3 weeks later, Dr. Mitchell testified before a federal grand jury about Konstantin Volkov's animal trafficking operation. With her testimony, Dr. Petrov's cooperation, and the evidence Enzo's people had gathered, Konstantin was arrested by FBI and Homeland Security agents and charged with multiple federal crimes. The federal investigation bypassed the local officials Konstantin had compromised, ensuring the charges would stick. Dr. Petrov, safely relocated with his family under witness protection, provided additional evidence that sealed Konstantin's fate. The threat was over. Indira stood on the balcony of Enzo's penthouse, watching the sunset over the Hudson. She had been living there officially for 2 weeks now, her apartment sublet, her life permanently intertwined with a man who was both dangerous and gentle, criminal and protector. Thinking about going back to your old life? Enzo asked, joining her at the railing. No, thinking about how grateful I am that I do not have to. She leaned into him. I reopened my clinic yesterday. Only part-time, and with security you insisted on hiring, but it felt good to get back to my animals. You needed that. The work, the normalcy. His arm came around her waist. I'm glad you're finding balance. Balance is an interesting word for dating a mafia boss. Is that what we are calling it? Dating? What would you call it? Enzo turned her to face him. He was holding a small box, velvet, obviously expensive. I would call it the rest of our lives. Indira's breath caught. Enzo, you saved my life, Kara. Not by pulling me from danger, but by showing me there was more to existence than control and power and walls. You broke through